All right, now Delhi-NCR has imposed the strictest anti-pollution curbs under Stage 4 of GRAP as air quality slipped into the severe category. Delhi's AQI had shot up over 500, prompting authorities to enforce all emergency measures. Officials said unfavorable weather, low wind speed and poor dispersion caused the spike. Schools have been allowed to run hybrid classes up to Class 11 to reduce student exposure. Residents have been advised to avoid outdoor activities as conditions remain critical. Meanwhile, the Delhi government said that there were 0 incidents of stubble burning this year, despite 7,000 acres of paddy cultivation. Chief Minister Rekha Gupta said strict monitoring and farmer cooperation have helped Delhi move towards cleaner air. However, the reality is the air quality continues to worsen sharply across Delhi-NCR. Authorities invoked the strictest restrictions under Stage 4 of the Graded Response Action Plan, triggering emergency curbs across the region. Now, this comes hours after the implementation of GRAP Stage 3 measured in the National Capital Region. Let's talk about all the restrictions that are in place for the same also. Restriction number 1, truck traffic restriction also, and restriction number 2, non-Delhi vehicles, those have been restricted. Construction activities have been restricted. Online classes for students have been restricted, and 50% work from home for private and government offices. Restriction number 7 then, vulnerable groups have been advised to stay indoors. So these are some of the strict measures under GRAP Stage 4 as the air quality in the Delhi-NCR region continues to worsen. We are now being joined by Nivedita Singh, who is bringing us all the developments. Also, Nivedita, what can you tell us?
The air quality in Delhi started worsening from Saturday morning. It is when the GRAP Stage 3 was imposed. But hours later, GRAP Stage 4 came into action after the air quality worsened further. The actions have been taken because the AQI crossed 400 mark, and in the last in about 24 hours, the AQI has increased by about 100 points. Right now, the AQI in Delhi is around 460. That is touching almost the upper limit of the AQI unit, that is 500. The action has been the restrictions have been imposed to ensure that the restrictions have been imposed to ensure that the human contribution to the air pollution is reduced, and also to ensure that the outside vehicles which are contributing to Delhi's pollution are not allowed in Delhi. However, there is a movement of huge vehicle movement we can see right now. This is central Delhi, and the one important factor that the experts have been raising since last 1 month is that stricter restrictions have been in place because several parts of Delhi were continuing to witness higher AQI, even though the average AQI was in control. So
all right.
Since the AQI...
All right, Nivedita, thank you so much for bringing us the latest on that. For more on this and to discuss what's really happening here further, we have with us Vimlendu Jha, environmentalist, and also Bhavin Kandhari. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, Mr. Jha, let me just come to you first. Of course, there seems to be no end in sight to this hazardous air quality crisis that we're all faced with. What do you think are the reasons for the continued spike in worsening air quality that we continue to see?
So, of course, the drastic change that we've actually seen in AQI in the last 24 hours primarily can be attributed to meteorological reasons in terms of the wind speed and dip in temperature. But largely what it means is that the pollution that is being caused locally is not able to get displaced in that sense. So therefore, the spike that we are actually seeing, or the pollution numbers that we're talking about, is not as if the pollution has increased in the last 24 hours or in the last 48 hours. The fact that it's been polluting, therefore we are actually living with these PM 2.5, PM 10 and other toxic air through the year. But this time, because of the wind speed or dip in the wind speed and change in the wind direction, the situation is worse. Now, we've also looked at how our parameters, actually, the government parameters or the monitors in that sense, actually stops at 500. If you look at several of these private monitors that people have actually been posting about on social media, many of them actually show PM 2.5 levels or overall AQI to be almost around 700 to 800 from Delhi. And these are from reputed organizations, international organizations that actually measure your air. Of course, the government is of the opinion that these air quality monitors, so-called the private air quality monitors that tells you 800, 900 or whatever, are not to be believed because they're not so-called official in that sense. But reality is that the entire Delhi region in that sense, Delhi-NCR is actually breathing toxic air, and we're almost helpless. We need to understand that all these GRAP 1, GRAP 2, GRAP 3, GRAP 4 measures are supposed to be, these are emergency response measures rather than governance measures. At the end of the day, you can shut down a few things so as the situation doesn't become worse in that sense. But you can't really depend. Your annual action plan on air pollution cannot solely depend on these knee-jerk emergency measures alone. Of course, I support these measures, but throughout the year after year, only depending on GRAP 1, GRAP 2, GRAP 3, GRAP 4 as your air quality governance is very, very unfortunate.
Absolutely. So you are saying that these emergency measures have sort of become a standard operating procedure for us, and that's not really a long-term sustainable solution. Ms. Bhavreen, let me come to you on that. Also, we are, of course, given to understand that, of course, schools have been advised to hold classes in hybrid mode. Now, it really is affecting the functioning of young children also, this crisis that we're faced with year after year. What's your take on what is really happening right now?
Yes, definitely. What Vimlendu just said. These are reactive measures, and that's really not how the pollution needs to be addressed. Of course, it's the need of the hour, and the hour means that will be by the hours, maybe by tomorrow or day after or whatever. The moment that number will come, even 1 point down, it will be revoked. So that really doesn't help because you're still breathing, the toxicity. The children, we have to understand the masses who are going to the government schools, who are, going to be out in any case, they will suffer. There are parents, there are the daily wage workers, they don't know, they can't go to work if the children are home. So there are many such problems. And, even now, when you're speaking about the complete bans on construction and vehicles demolition, these are only, they respond to emergencies, but not the root causes. While the whole year round you are doing massive construction, we are still in years now. For the last 7, 8, 9 years we have been constructing the 7 GPRA or the Central Vista and the various such projects. You have to understand, now we're hearing of the Nehru Stadium being demolished and broken. Now these are the kind of decisions. What you will take today will actually reflect on what's going to happen a decade from now, because
Right.
what for all the wrong, hopeless decisions were taken. That is the reason we are in this mess. The even on a daily basis, unregulated parking. There is no repairs. There are two layers of two parking completely park lanes all over Delhi. Delhi is a complete parking lot. So there are jams. Then you don't care about weddings, and there is a you have a non-stop in GRAP 2, 3, 4. You've had events, in stadiums and various things, marathons causing more traffic jams. Even when sorry to say, as much as it may be well-meaning, but our honorable chief minister, when she wants to go and see the sprinkling happening at ITO, the amount of jam that causes, I've been in one of them, stuck in that for two hours. So all these VIP routes, etc., those are the kind of decisions have to change. We have to fight this on war footing, and everyone will have to kind of cooperate and understand that things have to change. It's instead of asking for a lockdown, these are measures that you have to take on a regular thing. It's a systemic
Right.
changes that will bring the change, not these temporary bans on construction 2 days, 3 days.
All
It's
right.
okay. I mean, it's good for headlines, but it will not help.
All right, so we need systemic changes, fundamental changes which are required. Mr. Jha, let me just come to you on that also. What are some policy measures that you think need to be brought in immediately so that we can better deal with this crisis?
So I think it's well-known fact that Delhi's pollution is Delhi's own pollution. So first of all, we need to stop really blaming the neighboring states and others for Delhi's air mess in that sense. That's one. Two is that we also know that almost 50%, so 40 to 50% of pollution is primarily from the transport sector, which primarily means private vehicles. And therefore, the solution to that is not to really make policies which only enables or motivates people to buy yet another private vehicle. We'll have to strengthen public transport, and public transport not just for Delhi but for the entire region. At the end of the day, be it Gurgaon or Noida. Your studio is in Noida. I'm in Gurgaon right now, but we all are breathing the same air in the same air shed, and therefore public transport is extremely important. Similarly, rather than stopping construction and demolition activities and sprinkling water, we will have to really look at the source in that sense. And therefore, if there are rules of construction, demolition, waste management, or if our roads are supposed to be repaired and stay repaired throughout, we will need to, rather than settling the dust, we'll have to look at the source of the dust, because almost 30% of pollution, primarily of PM10 at least, comes from construction demolition activities, on-road dust and roadside dust in that sense. Similarly, coal thermal power plants, as in that we have in 300-kilometer radius, they don't really follow the emission standards of sulfur dioxide, and they are a big contributor to PM 2.5. So, these problems are actually known to us, and therefore solutions are also known. As in the breath that you actually state the problem, you're also stating the solution. At the end of the day, when I'm talking about, say, the thermal power plants not following norms, which means they should follow norms. When I'm saying road dust is the main contributor, and therefore why should roads be broken? And similarly, why should there be a deficit of 3,000 to 4,000 buses alone in Delhi? So solutions are well known to our political class, but there's complete ignorance and lack of political will that we see year after year. This year is also gone. 2025 is gone, and I'm sure you and I will have this discussion in 2026 about same AQI and similar issues.
All right, so this has become somewhat of a cyclical issue that we are seeing. Also, for more on this, we're right now being joined by Shrishti Chaudhary. Shrishti, thank you so much for joining us. If you could just show us around, what can you tell us right now?
Well, as you know, the air quality in the national capital has worsened over the last 24 hours, and we saw that how the graded response action plan was moved from stage 3 to stage 4, considering that air quality index across various parts of the national capital has crossed 400. And last evening, it even touched about 448. Now, that is basically severe plus, indicating that prolonged exposure to such air quality can really impact the health of the citizens here. And people have been advised to not step out without masks and exercise caution, especially the children and the senior citizens who are most vulnerable to this air quality. And remember that especially in the last 24 to 48 hours, the weather conditions have turned extremely unfavorable. The wind speeds have dropped, the temperatures have also plummeted, and there is dense fog covering large parts of northwest India. So that's what happens when the foggy conditions develop. Then there's high likelihood of smog forming, which is quite possible considering the air quality is now very severe. As you can see behind me, there is, the entire region has been blanketed by smog, and it's about 11 a.m. and we can still see that the visibility is very, very low in various parts of the national capital, as well as the adjoining cities, the satellite cities of Noida, as well as Gurgaon.
Absolutely. Now, Ms. Bhavreen, let me come to you on that also, as Mr. Jha also said that perhaps this is reflective of lack of political will. Let's talk about some other factors that contribute to this crisis, which has now become an annual crisis that we face. When we talk about these GRAP 4 measures, which are brought in place only when we could perhaps see such spikes, do you think there's a need for more sustained measures which are sustainable and can be implied? Because how long can you actually hamper people's mobility?
Yes, definitely. But, that's exactly what I said. It is all the systemic changes, the planning that needs to come in. I mean, you need buses. Everybody knows they were short on over 4,000 buses. In fact, it's more because there are a lot of buses that are stranded from the last year because of, the limitation, on, 15-year-old vehicles, etc. So they're pretty much gone. But the thing is, now where will the buses run? Have you seen the bus stops? They're all encroached. Have you seen the lanes? They're all encroached. So Delhi is in a terrible mess. And that mess is becoming worse because obviously on the ground, the laws are there. There's nothing that we don't have laws. There's zero enforcement. There's zero governance. And that is exactly the reason. You can just kind of replicate that with anything, whether it is construction, whether it's your waste management, or it's your vehicular, anything that you see. Right now, we are in a absolutely mode of misgovernance. That needs to change. Until that's not changed, that means that whoever's responsible, including the officers, authorities, citizens, they must be prosecuted. People are losing their health, they are dying, our children are going to live many years lesser. So there is no question of penalizing and letting people go. Now it needs to be brought in, so the judiciary also has to take a strong stand, not taking contempt cases, etc., into really things and forgiving everyone. So and the corruption, as you something that they needs to be checked. Telling my neighbor here, that please complain to CPCB if there's a construction thing. They say, "Kya hoga? MCD आएंगे, पैसे ले लेंगे." So see how people have lost trust, and
Right.
this is what the city has done to us. So there should be no room for this laxity. Everyone needs to be taken to task, and it's a battle that needs to be now on a war footing. Too much has been said.
All right. Now, Srishti, let me come to you. Of course, we are seeing that GRAP 4 restrictions are in place. If you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So, like I mentioned before, over the last 24 hours, the graded response action plan has moved from stage 3 to now stage 4. There are restrictions on the movement of vehicles, especially trucks, which do not conform to the BS standards, except those carrying essential goods. And the instructions have already been sent out to schools to opt for hybrid mode of schooling, classes up till class 11th, wherever possible. Schools have been advised to switch to online mode if it's okay with the school and the students and the guardians along with that. Apart from that, there is definitely more action on mechanized. See, a lot of the steps that the government takes has been on controlling the dust, which is basically PM10. So we see a lot of these anti-smog guns, intensification of those measures, controlling more of road sweeping, sprinkling water on the road. But scientists that I speak to also highlight that there's already a lot of moisture in the air, and these anti-smog guns pushing a lot of water into the air can actually worsen the air quality more. Secondly, doctors and experts have advised people to not go for intensive outdoor activities. People who go for early morning walks or late evening walks, who go for cycling, they can be much more vulnerable because the air quality is. So when we
Right.
say severe plus AQI, that means prolonged exposure to this air quality can really impact you.
Right. Now, Mr. Jha, let me just come to you on that. Of course, we've been talking about how this is now becoming has now become an annual issue. Why do you think it's not being treated with the same kind of urgency?
We don't know, as in perhaps as in we don't vote. People don't vote on the basis of the quality of air or quality of water or quality of our environment, and therefore our political class thinks that they can get away by discussing other issues and put those so-called other issues. Look at what's happening in the parliament. We've actually spent hours discussing Vande Bharat. We're spending hours looking at people, some MP smoking, versus that every child in the city of Delhi is actually forced to smoke 25 cigarettes a day. And it's not voluntary in that sense, as they don't have a choice but to breathe this bad, terrible air. So it's lack of priorities. There's no pressure on our political class to really act on this. And also, reality is that this is not something that should be discussed in legislative assemblies because it's not restricted to a particular state alone. Reality is that 90% of India's air is either poor, very poor, severe, or severe plus in that sense. The news that's coming from Mumbai, or for that matter from Calcutta, the air quality index in these areas also, and I'm only talking about big cities here, the smaller cities and countryside, we don't even measure the quality of air that exists. So therefore, it's very, very important that the Prime Minister's office or the central government treats this as the most important issue and does something about this.
All right. Well, Mr. Jha, Ms. Bhavrain and Srishti, thank you so much for joining me on the broadcast. Thank you so much.